Hello, people. This is AC Adam Crone. I'm sitting here with Kevin Kroll, KK, AC and KK on the mics. Welcome to Death by Podcast. Now, that might sound strange to anybody who listened to our first episodes. This is episode 2, which is actually probably no one. I'm guessing nobody has listened to the first episode. But it is available on our home, which is Podbean, and it is available, should be available on Spotify at the moment or very soon. We will also be available, searchable on Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iTunes, all that good stuff. We got some housekeeping to take care of before that happens. So welcome to Death by Podcast. And the reason I say that might sound weird is because when we recorded our first episode, we were calling ourselves the Horrible Podcast. And like a couple of idiots always do, we didn't do our research. And turns out there's like 17 podcasts called the Horrible Podcast in some iteration or whatever. So we changed our name, Death by Podcast. Lost Boys fans out there will know Death by Stereo, one of my favorite movies. Kevin, do you dig Lost Boys?
I do. I like Lost Boys, but like the person who introduced me to it, and many people I've met, I'm not nuts about it. It's not one of my favorites.
Sure.
Like, but I like it. It's solid.
Did you grow up with it?
I think I saw it in junior high.
Okay.
So
all right.
Around then, I mean, where I was, yeah. So, and I think I saw John Carpenter's Vampire. That's my vampire movie. John Carpenter's Vampires.
That is so funny, and we might have to pick that when we get to V.
Yeah,
I've got so much to say about that. But yeah, anyway,
yeah, me too.
It's we could do like a whole like James Woods like.
I love James Woods, man.
what a psychopath. But anyway, welcome back to the podcast, Death by Podcast. Write it down. If it changes again, we'll tell you. Today we are talking episode 2. We're talking about The Blob, specifically the 1988 remake. But we both did watch. What'd you say it was? 58?
I think it's 1958. Yeah,
1958, the original Steve McQueen, which I do really like it. Yes, it's dated. Yes, it has its Simpsons moments, as you'll probably explain. But it's on Svengoolie at least twice a year, it seems. So I see it a lot. And I don't know, it's got the original movie has there's a couple scenes in that movie that are terrifying, and there's a lot in the 88 movie. When I was watching, I was like, oh, they didn't take it directly from that movie, but they really didn't stray too far from it either, as far as
they didn't.
Concept. Yeah. Concept, like the story and characters. And one thing I really like about the original Blob, the 58, is the interaction between the Steve McQueen character and I don't know what, they're not punks, but they're like his friends, kind of not. They're like,
are they friends? Like, because
anti-friends?
Are they? Yeah, like they're the first scene. They're like, they're giving him a hard time. Then they want him to because doesn't he beat him in a street race by accident? Like he's just driving somewhere fast.
Yeah,
is that what it? And then they're like, hey man, you got to race me again.
Yeah, and they when they show up, it's almost like, oh, are they going to beat this guy up, or are they going to take his car or something? Like, but they end up. I like how they're like annoying, or they present a sense of danger, but then it doesn't take much for them to just like cool out and be good people and help out in the situation. And I love, I don't know what it is, like teamwork in a movie. Like I love that. Mm-hmm. And that's how it kind of like unfolds it towards the end, with everybody working together. And even when they like go to the old man's shack and get the dog, like everybody's working together. Steve McQueen shows up at the drive-in and is like, hey guys, I need your help. Let's get out of here and blah, blah, blah. And they go with him to help, So they're not bad guys. They're just like too cool for their own good almost.
Yeah, it's not awful by any means. Like, I mean, I just was a little not bored, but it was just it's a little dated, but it's not. I don't know. It's fine for whatever it.
Yeah.
As we were talking about before, the cops just really gets me in this movie because they are constantly like it just like they're constantly paranoid that they're being pranked. Yeah. Like to the point where I was like way it's one thing if it's like the beginning of the movie. Like, I remember at one point I was like, oh, there's still a cop being like, these fucking kids, like where it's been going on. Like, how elaborate do they think this prank is?
Totally.
And like
the deputy or whatever.
Oh yeah, it's the deputy specifically. And like, I think where they're like, hey, the doctor's been murdered. Okay. And the first thing is like, he's full of shit. He's pranking us. Like, he's like, hey, we got to go check this out. He says this guy's been murdered. They go and the guy's house is trashed. There's no body. So they're just like, these fucking kids, they're pranking us again. Like, like, what kind of a prank would that even be?
Which that's and then the old lady shows up and gives them
Mrs. Porter. I have her in my notes. She starts fucking up the crime scene. Like, hey, come on, Mrs. Porter, don't do that.
Yeah, she's like, I'll clean this up, and they're like, no, it's a crime scene. That is one of the scenes though, that the scene where the doctor gets killed. And Steve McQueen's outside the house, and he looks back at the house, and like,
it's like the window. That's the best stuff in the movie.
At the window, the shutters, like you don't really see the doctor, but you can see him kind of struggling in the shutters, or the blinds. I'm sorry, and it's just like, oh shit, like that's a rare scary moment for a '58 movie, black and white movie, like that probably wasn't necessarily intended to come off the way that it did, but I love that scene. It's so good. And I don't know, there's a couple others that I liked, but for the most part it's just like I guess for me it's more of a familiarity with it because I've seen it so much.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see I could see it being like a comforty type, like watching it over and over again. Like if it was on TV, I would if I happened to be going through the channels and it was on, I would watch it again.
Right.
But yeah, it was fun. Yeah. Steve McQueen's good in it.
Yeah.
And how old is he supposed to be in this movie too? Because he's like, I looked it up. He was 28, but he's got some like Reed Richards white in his hair. And like I'm like, is he supposed to be 18? Like he's in high school, right?
They're high school kids, right?
Like he looks like 40.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, dude. That's probably, I mean, it's not McQueen's youngest role or whatever, but I think that was one of his first, because the Blob, it's like the Blob obviously didn't make Steve McQueen, The Great Escape, Bullet, stuff like that.
Bullet, I would think, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, a good movie. I'm sure it'll come up later, but the meat of our talk is the 88 version, which this movie, for me, I remember when it came out. I remember seeing the trailers on TV and the commercial, and in the commercial they showed the scene, and we'll get to it later. But I remember the scene in the sewer with the kids and the water, and the kid like almost like he's riding towards them when he pops back up. And I just remember thinking like, wow, it was probably the first time where I saw a movie with kids in danger, and I was about that age when the movie came out. And so it was like this weird relatable thing where like this could happen to me, like, and I really wanted to see it. I didn't see it until later, obviously, but
there's something to that. I wish more things would, like really, I think that's why the Hunger Games was so popular. I never got on it because I was too old for it, but like that they're actually killing kids in that thing. Really, probably kids are probably way more into it because, because it doesn't, baby them and,
Sure. It includes, it like includes them in the action in a way.
Yeah. And that's, yeah. I mean, I think I don't know if we talked about it in the last one or if we've talked about it before, but I I always appreciate it. Good. A movie that has the balls to kill a kid.
Yeah.
Like, but we'll get to that.
Absolutely. All right. So 88, directed by Chuck Russell. You know what else Chuck Russell did?
He did the best Nightmare on Elm Street.
Hell
Nightmare on Elm
yeah.
Street 3.
Dream Warriors. Freddy! Hey Freddy, I'm gonna kill you, you pussy, Freddy. Freddy, you pussy. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Dream Warriors. What else? I had something else that he did that I was like,
he did The Mask and
The Mask,
and Eraser with
Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, which I saw in theaters, but I remember the gun. The only thing I remember is the gun from that movie.
Yeah, that movie I watched. That's the one with Vanessa something and an alligator, and
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's a crazy movie. But yeah, just the fact that he did The Mask is one of those movies that's like people always go, "Oh, The Mask," and I'm like, I'm sure, I don't know, I haven't seen it since it came out, but dang, somebody, can you hear that? Somebody's driving down the street, blasting classical music. That was awesome. But yeah, dude, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, like when I didn't realize that. And also this movie was co-written. So it was written by Chuck Russell.
Oh yeah.
And Frank Darabont.
My man, Frank Darabont, man. And this is super Darabont. If I didn't know any better, I'd think he directed.
Small Town.
It's got Darabont actors in it.
Yeah.
It's got
Dale from The Walking Dead, man.
Yes, is the sheriff. It's right in his wheelhouse, man. Like it's exactly what I think about when he's so awesome. He's one of those guys.
Why is Darabont your man? What are you,
well, I mean,
what are you a big fan of?
I just stories I've heard about him, and like if his movies are going to be about a small group of people and it's going to be like just character, like it's just going to be like just a character study. Like we're going to take a bunch of different kinds of people and we're going to put them in a fucked up situation, or even like just a weird, some kind of situation, and see how they deal with it. And the other thing is that I love that he does, and the Blob is really like this, is that they're not on the surface. You'd be like, okay, well, that's the bully, that's the jock, that's this, but they're not, you know. My favorite character in this movie is not. Would have been really easy to make him. It's I forget what the cop's name is. We'll get to him. But like
RoboCop.
Yes, RoboCop. I'm going to be probably referring to as Rocket or Romano, because he played a doctor named Rocket Romano on ER.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that actor, man. Yeah. I love that guy, and he's like pre-Sean B. He gets killed in so many weird ways when you think about it,
dude. When I saw him, I was like, and I remembered he was in it, but I was like, man, you melted to shit in RoboCop, and then you get snapped in half in this movie. It was like,
you know what they do to him in you know what they do to him on ER?
Oh, I didn't know go.
Oh, he was my favorite character on ER. He gets his arm chopped off by a helicopter in one season, right? So he's got to deal, and he's the best surgeon, like in the hospital.
Yeah.
So he has a whole season of dealing with that, like because he's like, he has to give up on being a surgeon, and then like right after like a year of like, then he goes down to like have a cigarette outside, or no, he goes up. There's a helicopter up top. He's going to get over his fear because he's afraid of helicopters now because one of them chopped his arm off. He goes up to the helicarrier at the top to like get over his fears. He pushes out. He goes downstairs and like just to get some air on the street, and the helicopter falls off the roof and like smashes him. It's it's the most ridiculous scene in all of VR, and I hate it because he's my and he's an asshole in that. I thought, you know what he looks like? He looks like Flea. If Flea looked like if Flea looked like a normal person.
He totally does, man. Now that you say that,
like Flea looks like a methed out Paul McCrane.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, now that you bring up the ER death, I wonder if he, like, when he does a movie or something, he's like, "Hey, is there any chance you can kill me in some weird way?"
I tweeted him about it, and he never got back to me because I was so pissed.
That's awesome. Going off the Darabont thing, right at the beginning, I love the logo and colors of the Blob. It's like a pinkish purple, like vaporwave sort of style. And then the very first scene is like that camera, like I don't know if it's a helicopter shot or if it's fake or what, but of the town.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's just an establishing shot of like, here's where the story takes place, and it's this little town surrounded by mountains and green.
Yeah, it's like like an island town almost, you know.
Yeah, only with land, you know. And it's I love that shot because I love like landscapes and cityscapes and stuff like that. So really cool way to start a movie like The Blob. And you know, like right off the bat we see, or not right off the bat, but relatively early, Kevin Dillon, who, like you were saying, you're talking about like heroes and main characters. There's this in this movie, you've got this weird like hero reversal where like you've got the football guy. I forget his name. I probably wrote it down.
It's oh god, I wrote it down too.
And you got the football kid, and then you've got Kevin Dillon, the greaser or whatever you want to call him, the bike guy. And and you think this, I remember the first time I saw this, I'm like, oh, here's the hero, this football kid, you know, the jock.
Yeah.
And I even have written down nice jock. And he gets waxed, you know. But Kevin Dillon, dude, in this movie, as the movie kept going on, at first I was like, I wrote down Kevin Dillon, is he a person? I don't know what that I don't know what that means, but the way he looks like an unfinished person or something.
I know what you mean.
You know, really weird. But as
he looks like his brother if you left him like in the microwave too long.
Exactly. Unfinished. Yeah. But as the movie went on, man, the confidence that his character exuded and the charisma that Kevin Dillon brings to it.
Oh, he kills it.
He's great.
He's great. And his character, that's what I mean. They made so many great choices with that character. Being like, for one, the whole town thinks he's an ass, like thinks he's a punk, but they never go into why, which because if they did, like, let's say he did something really screwed up or whatever, like it leaves you like, okay, well, it gives you anyway, the whole town doesn't like him.
It's stereotype. It's stereotype.
Yeah, it's a stereotype. Like, he might be an asshole, but but what I love about him is that like his number one trait is that he doesn't trust anybody. Like every situation, he's like, fuck this, I'm out of here. Like he just doesn't trust anybody not to screw him over. But that winds up saving his ass like a bunch in this movie. Right. You know,
and he does it with he does it with an assuredness and a confidence that you see throughout the movie when he's the science people are trying to get him into the van, and he's like, my bike's right over here, we're gonna do this, and then they pull guns on him, and he's like, you know what, a van ride sounds good. And and then I love the scene, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I love the scene at the end where he comes out of the sewer and picks up that machine gun, and just the way he stands with it is like his body posturing and his attitude. It's something you don't see in a lead in the 80s, especially the late 80s, in a movie like this, where it's like regular people, kids, small town. And it didn't stick out too awkwardly. Like he's supposed to be an action man. He's not.
Well, not to get too far ahead, but that's one of the, I wish more movies would do this, but like the scene where Meg, the girl, grabs the same gun. Yeah. It's a 2-second shot, and she doesn't know what she's doing. And she, you know what I mean? Like she's like awkward with it. And it's like, yeah, man, she wouldn't know how to fire a fucking AK-47. Yeah. Like, and it's just, I appreciate that. Right. You know, like, and then in the next, she's still shooting it in the next scene, but she had to be like, oh shit, with it. Like, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. Go. You got something to say? I was still looking like with that establishing shot, like they do like a bunch of that throughout the town, and it's like this weird ghost town, like the water fountains spraying all cockeyed, and there's like a cat and dust balls, and it's just a really interesting, totally Darabont, very Walking Dead season 1, like just really cool town, the way they establish where this is happening. I think that's that's the influence of the 58 movie, I think, coming in.
Oh, for sure. And like I like towns like that. I grew up and currently live in a town like that. I mean, it's less like it now than when I was a kid, but like the mechanic in town, like the next place in town's name is Reed's because Reed runs it. And we have multiple businesses like that, where it's like, oh, you have to go see Reed. And it's just like, I appreciate that. I think if we had a movie theater, it would be like dead on. And now it's like, now the town's like probably 4 or 5 times as big as it was growing up. But yeah, I love movies like this, the Mist, which is another Darabont movie.
Oh,
is
hell
like
yeah.
this.
Yeah. Great movie.
Yeah.
Go. What were you going to say?
What one, that's what I was going to say. So one thing is what I love about this movie is it's like a trope killer, man. Like everything that, you go in thinking like this is for a lot of people that haven't seen it or don't appreciate movies like this. It's an eye roll movie. People are like, my wife, who's great, she doesn't watch this kind of shit. She's like, you're The Blob? What the hell is that? Like, she's heard of it, but she assumes it's stupid because it's called The Blob. But it's if it were a shitty, like if it sucked, it would. That's this. I mean, I'll probably say this a lot. This is the perfect remake. Like, this is what remakes should be. You should be remaking movies that were like, that's not bad. It's kind of cool. It's a cool idea. But it's from movies that came out 50 years ago that people kind of remember. Don't remake Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Like a beloved masterpiece that everybody likes.
Absolutely.
Remake
The Blob.
Remake The Blob, exactly. Like, and make it awesome. Like, I feel it improves on literally everything.
Yeah,
that the original does.
I agree, and like you said, like the original, it's not like it's a terrible movie, but it is a dismissible movie, something that is easy to overlook, almost like you said with your wife because of the name. It's called The Blob.
Yeah,
like every time I hear that, I think of the scene in like Wolverine Origins where he's like where he's fighting. Is it Kevin Durant? I think the actor who plays the Blob, and
I don't remember who plays
and Wolverine goes, "Hey, bub," and he turns. He's like, "Did you call me Blob?"
I love his reaction. He goes, "No."
Totally.
Fuck, why would you say that? And then he fights him anyway. Like, it's so stupid.
So awesome. So let's round out the cast a little more. We got Kevin Dillon, we got Dale from The Walking Dead, we got the girl with the metal hat from Saw. I don't know her name.
I didn't realize that it was the same chick until, I hate it. I actually had to, while we were when we started this, I looked her up on IMDb and had to, because I couldn't remember the character's name, and she's great in it, and the character's great in it. Yeah, but I was calling her chick the whole time. Every time I'd be like, in my notes, she's just girl or blank. And I'm like, I'll fill it out later. I don't know why I couldn't remember her name.
You think, is she the first, what do they call them? Like machine gun gals or machine gun ladies, like cool chicks, hot chicks with machine guns. That's kind of that's a thing, isn't it?
It is, but like it's usually like chicks in bikinis. She's wearing like a cashmere sweater, and
that's true.
But she's good in this, man. Like she's awesome. She sells it. She sells awesome. The like goody two shoes girl, and
sure, yeah, she goes from cheerleader to machine gun wielder by the end. Great arc. You got the waitress. You got the nice jock.
You got the rapey jock.
Yeah. Oh man, that dude creepy. That's another thing that I remember from the trailer, or at least the first time maybe it was the first time I saw this movie, when he says, I wrote it down. He says, I don't know, he says, Binaka, like Binaka spray for your breath.
Yeah.
So he says, can I get some Binaka and Trojans to the
pharmacist
who ends up being her dad. But like, I remember
great character actor. Drawing a blank on his name.
The Tooth Fairy from the Santa Claus.
That's what when I was telling my wife about that guy the other day, I'm like, you know this guy, and like I'm naming all these movies. Like I'm like, he's Babe Ruth in The Sandlot. He's on Home Improvement. He's in this, and then, I said the Tooth Fairy, and she's like I was googling him doing the same thing, and she's like, oh yeah, you just said the Tooth Fairy. I'm like, Art LaFleur.
But and he says Binaka and Trojans, and I remember as a kid thinking, like, dismissing the word Trojans, but thinking that Binaka was something really bad. It just sounded really bad. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be watching a movie with that. But this is 2 movies in a row, dude, that we've talked about that has like kind of significant scenes about condoms. I don't know what's up with that.
It's weird. It's kind of
totally accident. I don't want the listeners to think we've got some weird, like,
it's probably why as a kid, buying condoms felt like the most like, and maybe it's because like, did they used to keep condoms like behind the register at because now it's not a big deal at all, man.
I don't know. Like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Now, I mean,
I can see, I've been to Walgreens where they keep them in like a lockbox in the city. Yeah. But like, and then I would just
like a little metal lockbox behind the counter.
Yeah. If that were the case, I wouldn't buy them there.
Some greasy man I think I have the key here, and he opens it up, and it's just like a bunch of like $1 bills and a few condoms and like some lint or something. Like that's what they do at Walgreens. Don't buy them from Walgreens, folks. But yeah, and then like, but that's, I don't know, that's a little up there. Anyway, I think that does it for the cast. I mean, you get like science men at the end, and you get who are significant, like, especially, I don't know his name, but the black guy, the lead science man, his death scene. Well, we'll talk about that. But
oh man, yeah, we'll get to him. I really liked him as a whole, like, because he comes off very trustworthy at first. Like, okay, well, yeah, they're who you would call, and that's actually a thing. I'm sure that was a Frank Darabont thing, because that was one of the things he left The Walking Dead over. I guess they just wouldn't, like, they wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do.
Yeah,
you know. And I remember watching that show, and they go to the CDC, and I forget where I read or heard this, but that was Frank Darabont's thing. Like, no, you would go to the CDC if this happened. Well, that's what they have to do. Sure. Because that's exactly, and they don't do that in the comics, whatever. And it was a big fight, and I respect him because he walked. Like, he was like the thing that got that show made, and when he couldn't do what he wanted, he's like, "Fuck off."
Right. You know? What does that have to do with the science man?
Shit. You're right. Sorry. That's what you were talking about earlier. Tangents.
Well, you said that, that you mentioned that he comes off trustworthy at the beginning, and then he turns into the absolute.
He's the worst.
He's the biggest piece of shit. Yeah.
Oh, I have what a dick move written when he does that sewer move. We'll get to it. We keep going to that. Like that.
I know that whole section. Ending. All right. So why don't you?
Oh, you got the priest, by the way. As far as characters, you got the priest.
He is a really important character. Well, I don't know. All right. So that's the opening. Why don't you take us through where we at? Let's see. Opens up kind of like the biggest significant opening, or part of the beginning is probably the football game. Do we meet Kevin, or maybe we meet Kevin Dillon before that? And he's on his bike. He's on his bike.
No, it's going on during the football game.
And his bike is like three sizes too small. And
yeah,
like it's
a Triumph bike, which I think is a thing with, I don't know. It's supposed to be. I guess they're smaller motorcycles, and they have their own following, I guess.
Oh, really? Okay. Even back then, because I've seen guys on small bikes recently.
I don't know. I mean, I remembered it being I rewatched it last year for the first time in a long time. I remember thinking it was a dirt bike, but it's not. It's a motorcycle. There's a few things in this movie that I like we'll get to that. There's a few things I remembered differently. Really? That I thought were always the case and weren't once I really, really sat down with it. But
so we get that, and we get the football game going.
Yeah, and the football game is spliced with his introduction, and where he's testing out his bike, where he's trying to make a jump.
And they introduce the guy with the nice jock at the same time, and he's being very courteous about like
Paul is his name, the
Paul,
jock.
being very courteous about when is he going to ask the cheerleader out, and he's like, when it's right, when the time is right, and he's not being a douchebag. So you're like, oh wow, we're getting these two characters at the same time. One is this like motorcycle guy with a really cool mullet and kind of like, is he a human or not? And the other guy is this like obvious hero. He's a football nice guy and ends up getting a date with the cheerleader and
a really like cute scene too, to be like, like you feel for him, and he's not a stereotypical jerk, like, and he has that misunderstand, like, then you have the condom scene where that leads into where he's at the pharmacist's house. It turns out that the pharmacist is the daughter of, anyway, there's that, so it's a little endearing. You like this guy,
right? They totally set this guy up to be someone that you absolutely want to see to the end of the movie. And then he like, man, his death scene is like,
awesome.
It's awesome, but it's awesome, period. But that thing has stuck with me ever since, more than anything in this movie, because it's like, whoa, like this isn't supposed to be happening. And I recently,
it really throws you off. The first time I saw it, I didn't know if I really liked the movie, because it really fucked me up, because it was like,
right.
It just felt like it was off track,
right.
Following Kevin Dillon's character. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No. We left out the homeless man who's like the key master of this whole thing. When the meteorite lands and like he pokes it with the stick, and again with the dog, it's like another, the dog makes it, but it's like another movie, man. We got the condom connection, and then this dog.
The dog. Wait, in the like first one, the dog dies, right? In the 58 one.
No, I think, remember, he disappears for a while, and I think at the end, we see the little boy with the cap gun.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I remember like them with the blob outside the door, and the girl being like, "What about the dog?" And he's like, fuck the dog.
No, that does happen. Like people, like the dog gets left out. I'm just like, man.
Yeah.
But they get this homeless guy. He gets the blob on his hand. They get him. They take him to the ER, and that's like the beginning. This is all after the after the football game. Dates going on. They're on their first date, and the homeless man runs out. Kevin Dillon's chasing him, trying to help him out, because he gets the blob on his hand when he pokes it with that stick, and it like moves all fast up the stick onto his hand. Yeah. There's some like effects like that in this movie, which this movie has just as, I would say, almost just as good effects as like The Thing.
They're great, and that there's a couple like janky shots where you can tell, like, I forget what it's called, but you could tell that, they shot that on green screen, and I forget what that effect is called.
Yeah.
But there's maybe two that like take you out of it, like. But it's great, and a lot of those effects too. Like I think it taking over his hand like that. Right. I'm pretty sure it's just like the camera upside down and fast forward and in reverse.
Like you think it's like oozing down, and they just sped it up or something.
Yeah, I think that's what they did. I think that the camera's upside down. I know they did that a lot in the 58 version.
Okay.
That I think it's the camera's upside down, and it's dripping on his hand, and then they just fast forward. Or they fast forward and rewound.
There were a lot of tricks like that in this movie. There was another one that they used in The Stuff from 1986. You see The Stuff?
I've never seen it, but I've been told I love it.
Dude, you will love it. It's this scene where like people who have seen The Stuff will know what I'm talking about. It's pretty famous, where like the stuff is supposed to be spraying out of a bed onto a wall and sort of onto a man and pinning the man against the wall. And they just kind of like turn the room.
Mm-hmm.
There's another scene in this movie where the blob does that. It sort of like jumps out and goes on to like the ceiling. I think it's when the shit comes out of the sink in the diner.
Oh yeah,
it goes onto the ceiling. I think that's what it is. And it's like, I think it's like an upside down room or something like that. like a really easy effect to achieve. But it looks so great. There was so much practical effects in this movie, and I appreciate that so much. A lot of them, though, I don't know how they knocked it out, how they did it. But with the homeless man dripping, that makes sense. So they get him, they go to the ER, they set him up there, they're waiting. And at this point, it's all three of them in the same
Yeah.
room.
And if you get the first example of him being like, of Dillon being like, hey, fuck you. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm not like, what, like he's got that attitude. And then he's like, already this guy's like, hey, you're a punk. And he's like, I'm going to go because I know you're going to blame this on me.
Sure.
Like, he doesn't trust anybody. He's like, this thing's going to get pinned on me if I don't go fucking talk to the cops myself.
Right.
So he goes, and that's basically what happens, even though, like, I mean, he's right.
Right. And that's what happens later. But before that, you get two, again, like these effects and like the makeup that they use in this movie is phenomenal. You get the homeless man gets half eaten while everybody's around.
But yeah. So, before that, they bring him to the hospital, and they're dicking with like, oh, does the homeless guy have insurance? And like, what the fuck? And then Kevin Dillon's like, they don't give a fuck. So I'm leaving. They're not asking questions. And so whatever, he leaves.
Right.
And then they get him in whatever. And yeah, sorry to jump ahead, but yeah, I felt like that was important to be like, he again, doesn't trust anybody, leaves. And and then they go to check out the homeless guy because he's acting all weird. Great makeup on his eyes too. Yeah. Like when his eyes are all white.
Love that.
And he's just gone. Like this thing just ate. Like what the fuck is this?
Like half of his lower half of his body is just absent. It's like melted and all this shit.
Yeah. And then I mean, then we get, Paul, is it Paul? Yeah, you get Paul's death scene, which
Jock man.
Yeah. You tell you what, it's a twofer because it's got the whole, oh man, like he might be fucked here. Like it's got like, he looks like he's in trouble like the first time you see him because it's got, whatever.
Yeah.
And then she goes, the classic horror thing. She goes to pull his arm. Right. It comes off. And for me, I didn't even he's fucked then. Like, oh, wow, are they going to really do this? And then they show the next shot. The last shot you see of him is melted. The worst. Yeah. Where his eyes are gone and they're just bleeding. It's just so brutal.
All right,
to do it like your main guy.
So this, I want to get into this. So like the way that the blob kills people is like this weird, like it's not just, I guess it's almost just like a slow disintegration in a way. What is that? I mean, it's like the blob is made of acid or something. And with this guy, with the homeless man, it dissolves his entire lower half. It kind of, but it's like, at what point does it actually kill the person? Because we see later on, a couple people are like inside the blob, and it almost looks as if they're like still part conscious or something. So with Jock, it's like the thing lands on him it's on the ceiling, which so he goes into this room to call the cops, and the door behind him slowly shuts, as if this thing is like a slasher. You know? They give you that feel like it's not just like it's sentient, like it's not just a machine muscle that's eating everything, that it's like thinking in a lot of ways. And the door slowly shuts behind him. We see it creep up to the ceiling, and then it drips acid down, and he looks up and it falls on him. And that scene of like, when he looks up, it like unfurls and falls, terrifying, like a net.
And it's great because even that whole scene, because he's like the main guy, there's still that like sense of like, and it's so early in the movie, like, and they just killed somebody like 5 seconds ago.
Right.
You get okay, well, this is going to be some exposition, or this is going to be some, explain, he's going to get away. And then he doesn't. Like it's just such a,
it's a kick, man. It's
not even like, it's good. And it's not even like Scream, where it's like, or Scream or Psycho, or not really Psycho, but like where it's the opening scene of the movie. You know what I mean? Where it's its own little thing. It's just you're a good 15, 20 minutes into the movie when this happens.
And that's something that, most movies, it's like they set their watch by, okay, here's a death, then you wait a little while, here's another death, and you get like maybe like 3 or 4 good deaths throughout the movie. But like you said, like this one, it's like bang, 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 like, and it almost is in like pairs in a lot of ways, because we get the other couple later, like shortly after this. It's relentless like that. And so anyway, when this thing drops on him and it cuts, and you think, like you said, like, hey, he's the hero, he's not gonna, and it's early in the movie, he's not gonna die. Like somehow it'll cut back and he'll be like, fending it off with a chair or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's in it, and she comes into the room and he's like screaming underneath it as it's like melting him down. And he's like
it's the cover of the regular DVD.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arrow has a great Blu-ray version that I don't have because it's been sold out since Red Letter Media did it.
Yeah.
But Arrow, if anybody knows Arrow DVD or Arrow Blu-ray, they do a great 4K remasters of movies. But yeah, the cover of the regular DVD, I think I have it over there.
Yeah,
I do. But it's awesome. It's the
same. It's the same as the VHS.
Yeah, where it's just
him like reaching out, which man, which
was really the actor, which is funny.
Oh yeah, totally. I saw behind the scenes of this, and it's like a shell that they built around him, and then if you want to tear the scene apart and you pause it and look at it, you can see like where the arm is coming out of the tube, like a tube almost.
Oh really?
When he's reaching for her, and it's like this almost like a dome, and there's a hole for the arm to reach out. But it's genius the way that they did it, all practical. It's insane.
And they did a Hans Gruber on I keep drawing a blank on the actress's name on Meg, because so they were friends in real life. I think they went to high school together. I think he might have even taken her to prom.
Really?
I could have that wrong, but I know they knew each other from high school, and they had been hanging out, and they told her it was going to be a stuntman and a puppet. And then when she got like, that's her real reaction to like, when she didn't know it was really going to be him in there,
yeah.
and she didn't know what she was going to see. That's awesome. Like her real, like, oh my God, Jesus Christ.
I don't know where I saw this. It was a whole like behind the scenes featurette when I watched it like last year or the year before. I think it was like 2 years ago or something last time I saw it. I'll have to look. Maybe it's online, or maybe it's whatever streaming, but yeah. And then like you said earlier, when they cut back and you get even more, he's melting even more. And it's just like,
oh, that's the shot. Fucked, it's like, man. Jesus,
this guy is fucked. And that's what I was saying about like, at what point are you dead in this thing? Because it seems like it takes so long. And in the end of the movie, we see all these people strewn about in the movie theater, on the street, and they're not dead. They're like half melted or like no arm. It's insane what this thing does as it like just passes you by or whatever.
I'm just because I'm afraid I'll forget. One of the really cool things they did with this movie, because was they used a lot of like Vietnam vets or like as like bodies or like for like the people that had their arms missing and shit, and they would do them up with makeup like that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
to like
there's the one going back to when the blob moves onto the homeless man's hand. There's a quick cut right there where it goes to the kids in the kitchen sucking Jello off a plate. Do you remember that? There's like It's like the blob moves onto his hand and it cuts, and that's when we get introduced to the kids.
And they're talking about the Jason movie.
Yeah, and she's like getting ready for a date, but it cuts to them, and the first thing you see is one of the kids sucking up Jello off the plate. And I'm just like, that's perfect. Like that's 80s right there. So awesome. And those kids,
great transition.
Those kids are so great. They're so 80s.
Yeah.
Their look, the vibe of that kitchen. For people who don't know, like I'm the most nostalgic. My dog is eating, I don't know, paper. I'm the most nostalgic person that you've ever met, and I love the 80s. And anytime I see like this scene in the kitchen reminds me of it's got that ET vibe. Almost.
I was just gonna say the opening kid scene in ET.
Yeah,
that makes me think of 80s kids. So like what houses were like.
Yeah,
it's just loud. Or the scene. Do you know Explorers?
Yeah, absolutely.
With Ethan Hawke, the scene where he goes to River Phoenix's house. And it's just like people yelling. The kids are eating fucking cereal. It's a mess. They're wearing like a weird mask. They got off a cereal box.
Yeah,
I love them. They just put out a new like special edition like Blu-ray of it. Yeah. And and it has like Ethan Hawke talking about it. Like I love that movie.
Yeah,
but we can talk about that.
That is a great movie. All right. So where we leave off, we're in the hospital.
Okay, Blob kills Paul and the homeless guy, and they call the cops. Cops come, and they ask that nobody saw this happen except for Meg, and they're like, "What happened exactly?" And she tells them, and they're like, "Okay, well, whatever. We're gonna go." But again, they don't like fucking Kevin Dillon, so they're like, Kevin Dillon was here, totally. So like, let's go get Kevin Dillon because he clearly killed this guy.
Strap him to a chair. And I love that scene where RoboCop's like
this is my maybe my favorite scene in the movie.
He's all on his face and Kevin Dillon licks him.
It's the best. That scene, I love that scene because it tells you everything. This movie is so great at showing and not telling.
Yeah.
Like who everybody is. It's just like everybody in that scene. RoboCop he's a dickhead cop who just who gives a shit if he did it or not. Let's just keep him here. Fuck this kid. Like he's just an asshole. The other cop is like a good cop being like, dude, we don't have any evidence on him.
Right.
He doesn't bring up like, the guy got melted. How the fuck do you even do that? Whatever.
Okay, that's the thing. You got these cops. You got these. I'm doing air quotes. You got these cops who, Walking Dead is a good cop. RoboCop is a deputy. But you just looked at a homeless man that was half melted, and you just looked at this high school kid who probably the only thing left behind was his arm.
Right.
Why would you arrest Kevin Dillon at all? Like what does he have?
Well, they got to bring him in for questioning, and then when they can't arrest him on anything. But yeah, exactly. They know. They're like, yeah, he didn't melt these fucking people. He has no motive. That's why they let him go, because he has no motive.
That is awesome. I didn't that didn't click in when I first watched it, but I was like, hey, can you not do that? Hey, God. Jesus Christ. But yeah, I didn't notice it when it first happened, or when I was first watching it, but I was like, oh, Walking Dead is like a really good cop. Like he's setting his deputy straight, and the deputy's just this Neanderthal testosterone, whatever, dude who's like, no,
he's a hothead.
Yeah, he's a hothead, he's sure.
And he has, he throws a bunch of cheap shots at Kevin Dillon, that his mom's kind of a slut. His dad's not around. Right. But the face lick man is my favorite. It's so great because it's just like, I wish I had thought I don't get in a lot of, altercations like that, but if someone's in your face like that, that's the best thing you can do. Just gets up in his grill. What are you going to do about it? And because it's Kevin Dillon being like, what's he going to do? He's not going to back down.
Right.
But he's also, the guy's a cop.
Is that the best thing? Is that the best thing you can do when someone's in your face?
If you're because what's the other person going to do besides flip out? Especially if that, because I'm not a big guy. If that there's someone else there to break it up right away.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the. It's such a fuck you move.
Yeah. I suppose if I'm handcuffed to a chair and I have no other options, maybe that thought might cross my head. So I'll give you that. There's a few UFC. I used to watch a lot of UFC, and there's they do the face-offs the day before, and there's one in particular that's really funny because there's a guy who's super serious. He's in the other guy's face, and the guy's like, okay, whatever, dude. And then the guy who's not taken seriously, just
gives him a little kiss, and the guy loses it. He falls off the stage and like wants to like murder him.
Yeah,
and the guy's like, "Fuck off, dude."
I'm sure a lot of that has to do with just like this, like RoboCop and that wrestler with like a tinge of homophobic feelings when that happens,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, relax. But they when they finally set him free, and he leaves the cop station. This is when I dropped my is Kevin Dillon a person? Because this is where when he walks out of there and he bumps into the girl, he has this like this is the first time where he's got this swagger, and and they accentuate his mullet, dude, which is like, dude, his mullet is like, it's almost like half Jerry curl, half mullet in a way. And like, this is the dude from Entourage, right?
Yeah.
So like,
I watched every episode of Entourage.
I've only seen a few. I know he's in
not missing anything. It's
That's
exactly what you think it is.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I'm not good with with like douchebags being put up on a pedestal, but like,
oh yeah.
But he has this swagger, and he like turns, and like you see his mullet, and I'm like, oh shit, like now I see what this character is about. And that's all Kevin Dillon, man. And I give him credit. I'm surprised that this dude, I'm surprised, Matt Dillon, yeah, Oscar here and there, whatever. He made some famous movies, or he was in some, but like, for my money's on Kevin Dillon. I'm surprised this guy didn't get more work after this movie.
I think he kind of got typecast as a douche, because I mean, he did this and he did Platoon, I think the year before. Platoon's 86. Yeah. And he's a doucher in that too, Yeah. And I think, but and he kind of in Entourage, he kind of plays a guy that was a big deal. It's funny, he was a big deal in the 80s for like this long, and then he got on like a Hercules type show. So like he's kind of like forgot, whatever, until there's an episode about Comic-Con where he's a big fucking deal and people flip out. But like, not to talk about Entourage, but he's a great actor, man. I wish he was in more stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's like now, but in this movie, man, when that's the scene that like turns it, and this is also like a lead in. This is the reprieve in the movie, because we got the the homeless man dead, the jock dead, surprise, and now it's like this reprieve where he goes into the diner and he has a sandwich, and the girl comes in and they talk, and she's like, they kind of like become friends and they understand each other, but then I don't know, this actually lasts like a good like 10 minutes, this little like calm. Yeah. But then, it's a cool, again, like it's showing, not telling. Every little, when that scene, she's like, I went to bail you out. And he's like, yeah, they don't take plastic. Like he's done this before, man. Like this is old news to him. And she doesn't have any fucking idea, and it really is just a cool, and it's a great, like, getting to know each other scene. Even the waitress in the diner, which they set up earlier in the movie again as a main character. That's what separates this movie from. Yeah. Oh, she was in Walking Dead too. Oh, her and the sheriff. Her and the sheriff. Yeah. They're gonna. But like that's the thing about this guy too, or this movie too, is like almost everybody in it except for the rapey jock, which we'll get to. He's dead at this point. We should go back, right? Because there's something about that scene that I have questions about. But like almost everybody's a good person in this movie. Like, it in a lot of slashers, you have your stereotypes or your whatever, or like if you have like even like Jurassic Park, you've got like your Newman character who you're like, all right, this guy's a piece of shit. When's this guy going to die? Where he's going to die. There's nobody really like that, except for the CDC guy. And even him at the beginning, you think he's a good guy. Right. Everybody's a good person. No, you're totally right. I agree with you. You get tinges of it from the preacher he's creepy. The preacher's creepy when you introduce him. But yeah, like while this is going on though, the blob goes from the hospital downtown in this town all the way out into the back out into the woods. And to the point where the rapey, creepy dude and one of the, I don't know her name, but she's one of these like ultimate 80s chicks. Like,
it's Elena Elenak. I had a huge crush, or Eleniak, I think is how you pronounce it. I had a huge crush on her as a kid. She was in Playboy. She played oh my god, I'm drawing a blank on the character's name. She played the daughter on the Beverly Hillbillies remake.
Okay.
She was in a movie called Chasers, where she got naked, and it was like I wasn't expecting her to get naked. Oh, she's also in Under Siege. That's probably what most people know her from.
She pops out Under Siege.
Yes.
All right.
She's the love interest in Under Siege.
Sure. So you're just perving, like being pervy on her.
Oh yeah, she was a big one for me, man.
Right.
Yeah, she was
just one of those 80s chicks that I'm like, oh, I know her face.
She's also in E.T. She's the little girl that Elliot kisses in the frog scene.
Really?
When he's having the weird thing, telepathic thing with E.T. Yeah.
Really?
Then he makes out with that chick. Yeah, that's her.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it goes back out into the woods, which is weird. It goes from downtown, where there's lots of people to kill, all the way out to the point.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got, like, I have in my notes, why so many strawberries?
Are there a lot of strawberries?
The creepy dude he lifts up so they're in the car, like, making out, and he's like, let me get you another drink. He lifts up his the trunk, and he's got, like, all right, so it's just two people, right? But for some reason he's got, like, an entire bushel of strawberries, when he knows that he's probably only going to make, like, 2-3 drinks each. And
okay.
He's got enough strawberries in there to make drinks for, like, an entire bar's worth of, like, bar crowd. And I'm like, why so many strawberries, man?
Well, his whole trunk is like a portable. It's like one of those things that, like, when I was younger, I just assumed wasn't even like a joke. Like, it was just, oh yeah, that's fine. Like, I don't know, like the robot in Rocky 4 for some reason makes me like, yeah, all right, yeah, he would have a robot like that. Like, that's fine. I don't know why, but that his trunk is like that. Like, yeah, he's a dirtbag.
Wait. Of all the robots that are famous from the 80s, which the 80s, like, created the robot scene, you're just like, you see Rocky 4 and you go, yeah, that's the robot that he would have. Not one with legs, not one with laser beams, not one with.
What I mean was, I didn't find it unusual. I mean, I saw Rocky 4 when I was young, and many times, and never found it to be odd. Like, when people talk to me about Rocky 4 and people bring up that it's weird that Paulie, like, has, like, a robot, like, that doesn't even register as odd to me. But when you watch, like, when my wife was in the hospital having our first kid, we watched the first few Rocky movies, and I like, in a row, and I was like, oh yeah, that is a big jump from Rocky 1 to there's a robot in Rocky 4. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So these guys, they would have benefited from a Rocky 4 robot. She's, like, passed out in the front while he's getting the strawberries on, and then all the while the blob is, like, eating her from the inside.
So that's what I want to know. That's the scene. So, like, it's cool watching this guy get eaten because he's a dirtbag and everything else.
Yeah.
And even, like, when he gets it, like, the noise that he makes is great. But, like, yeah, when he's going to make the move, and then, like, her face, like, so that's what the blob is doing. It's eating her from the inside, right? So
this is what makes this creature so insidious, is that imagine her sitting on the front seat of this car. She passes out. He's outside in the trunk doing his strawberry thing, and the blob, we see it come through the grass, remember, like, jiggling through the grass. So we just have to imagine, which is great. This is one of the, like you said, the show don't tell, whatever you said. It somehow, he left the door open, I guess, to the car, so it gets in the car. She's passed out.
Okay.
And then what does it do? Like, this is up to us to decide how this like unfolded. I always imagined that it, like, and seeing this as a kid, I always imagined that it came up from the back seat, where there's, like, a crack between the part you'd sit on and the backrest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you always lose your change or your little toys, and you can stick your hand through there because it's an older car, right?
Yeah.
And like it squeezed up through the back and went into her butt and like up through her butt and dissolved her from the inside out. The other option is because it got into her. It's in her.
Yeah, because it comes out of her shirt, right?
Yeah, like it kind of
Like that's his first.
Well, her face caves in.
But before her face caves in,
I guess you're right.
isn't there an initial like, what
Yeah,
the fuck is that?
Yeah, because
and then he looks at her and her face caves.
Yeah,
That's got to be the scariest one.
Oh,
like
dude,
not for like the audience, but as a person, like as like a person in the movie, to like whoa,
because he's messing with her. He's getting all pervy on her shirt.
Yeah,
and then it like does. This is the first time that we see it behave like John Carpenter style, like The Thing, where it's got like the tentacles almost. Oh
yeah,
that are like squiggling around and shit. Like that shit. It fucks with me so bad. In The Thing, when that happens, you know, like somebody like breaks open and it's like, blah, 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 or the dogs, you know, it's like, man, that is just wrong. And this is the first time we see it do that. And it grabs his arm.
Yeah. That's But and then the shot from outside the car, and you just see his feet in the window, like swing, and they have this like cracking noise, like it's just so perfect to be like.
Well, it like when her face caves in, it like does that unfurling thing again, where it like and like and it comes at him, and it like, and we see it, and it like fills the car.
Oh yeah, man, yeah.
So that's another.
That's not even So getting back, then not even the next death. Oh no, God, you've got two more. God, that's the death scenes in this movie, man, dude, are so creative. Because think about what they have to work with. Like, I mean, especially the first one. You know, we talked about the windowsill or the window. You know, the window. That's pretty much like they were so creative and like, okay, what do we get? How are we going to kill people in this? I mean, it's Jello. It's a giant, you know, and just to be
well, the blob itself as a creature evolves through this movie to the point where every death, it's almost like attained a new attribute to kill somebody. So like in the beginning with the homeless guy, it's just like a little thing that like grabs onto his hand. Then it turns and it dissolves, it grows and dissolves him. Then it turns into a thing that can act like a net when it falls on Jock. Then it goes and it crawls through the grass and it gets inside, and now it has an arm almost like where it kind of the tentacles. So it keeps evolving in a way to where it can like use its mass in different ways, you know? And that's terrifying, because when we get, you know, later on, we see it like in the movie theater what it does. And so
sorry, I just had a thought about Frank Darabont, but that
busted.
I wonder if when he was writing it, now that I think about it, one of the big things he did with Walking Dead was he added Daryl, and that impacted the show. Basically became I don't know if you're writing the comics, Daryl's not in the comics, and the rest of the show was basically like, it was dead on from the comics, and then you get Daryl, and then it splits, and it's like, well, what if Daryl was there? How would things change? And I think that's what I wonder if that's how he wrote this, with killing the main guy. You know what I mean? Like, what happens if Steve McQueen dies? Because other than that, it's pretty much dead on.
Right.
But, you know, like they run to the homeless guy, they bring him to the hospital, all that shit. Like, I wonder if that was like, what if Steve McQueen died in the hospital? What's the rest of the movie look like? You know, does she go find those guys? And so I didn't mean to go on a thing, but I just kind of had the thought.
That's actually really interesting, because I didn't think about it. Like, there is no Kevin Dillon character.
Watching the original. Yeah, it seems like all the jockey guys are just, they made them into one guy, one super cool mullet motorcycle guy. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then reversed it, like the hero reversal.
Yeah.
So like you hinted at, we got two other, they're still chilling in the diner. We got two other really great kills, almost back to back, with with the cook getting which is just like,
and it's another fake out, because you got the waitress who is trying to unclog the sink.
Sure.
And this guy steps in and says, I got it. And then what happened? I mean,
jumps up and grabs his face.
It kills him. Yeah. But
and pulls him
into the drain,
crushes his head and pulls him into the drain.
And what I love is they show the drain pipe like expanding, like to handle all this, like,
and like by the time everybody else comes back there, it's like his arm and his leg are like together.
Yeah, he's just it's so great. And they're all like, what the fuck is this? But like what I love is by her, and again, she's like a pretty fleshed out for as much screen time as she's had. Like, you know, she's like, oh, I gotta work tonight, I got this, and I'll go out on a date with the cop and this. And like, she's a good person. She lets Kevin Dillon in. She's like the only person in town that's nice to him.
She's like, she's very motherly.
Yeah. And then her scene, so she runs out to the phone booth.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Main character, the two hide themselves in the cooler, and this is where we see what the the weaknesses of the blob, which is cold. And I can't remember if it's in the cooler or right before that or something, where we see more of this confidence from Dylan, where he looks at her and he's like, I'm gonna get us out of this. Like,
yeah. And then gives her his leather jacket.
Yeah. And then obviously we see in the end it's a team effort, but I love that character so much. But yeah, so the waitress, she like freaks out, goes out, gets in the phone booth, calls the cops to call Walking Dead, and all of a sudden the blob is like oozing down the outside of the phone booth, and we see Walking Dead in the blob. So he dies off screen.
Well, she's calling him.
Yeah. He dies off screen though.
Yeah. Well, he says, I'm going to go to the diner.
He says, I'm going to go to the diner.
And it never dawned on me. I mean, I've seen this movie a ton. And I always thought when she sees him in the thing, I thought that was the cook. I thought that was the dishwasher guy that just died.
Sure.
I never, because watching this last time, I was like, what the fuck happened?
Well, you see his
dead cop.
You see his
you see the badge. But like, that's just something I always missed. I was just like,
at first, my first reaction every time I see this is I always forget about two things. But my first reaction is, man, what who's writing this? Like, they killed this guy off screen and he's just here. But like you said, he goes, I got a bad feeling. I'm going to head down to the diner. And then when she calls the police station from in the phone booth, the operator lady, whatever, says, oh, he went to the diner. And then all of a sudden you see him in the blob. And it's like, that is great writing, actually, and it's like, every time I watch this, I always forget about those two things and how you don't need to see everything. You don't need everything explained. This is a crazy creative movie, both physically and how it's written, for just period, but also for the time, for 1988, to get a horror movie that's this well thought out.
Oh yeah. This is in the
called The Blob. I mean, it's like,
this is right slashers were like coming out a dime a dozen at this time, right. And this doesn't have to be this good, like
which there's not a slasher movie written, maybe the first Nightmare on Elm Street. But most of them are just like, okay, how do we kill this person? How do we kill this
right
person?
Exactly. We're going to write. Yeah.
And they did that in this, but they also gave us like just smart stuff like this.
Yeah. And not like, and I know I said it earlier, but yeah, just giving that little bit of like, oh, they have a date later and shit like that. Like really just fleshing out all these characters enough that you care about them. Rather than, you know what I mean? Okay, that's the jock, that's this guy, that's this guy. And then so that when it kills them, you're like, oh, she didn't make it. Which
is another really cool thing that like killing the jock so early and surprising you with that, killing Walking Dead off camera and surprising you with that. That's Darabont.
It makes it feel like nobody's safe. Like they could get anybody at it. Kevin Dillon could bite it anytime.
Yeah, no, that's Darabont. That's Darabont totally. So we get the hey Eagle. That's enough. She's barking. It's like one dog will bark and then like everybody barks.
It's a big dick contest. I get it. I've been there, man.
So we go from the phone booth. We got to talk about that. Her death scene, man, as the blob like creeps down over the phone booth and then just like crushes her. The way that physically looks is amazing.
It's awesome. And like, I remember like thinking like, maybe the second time or something, just being like, well, how is she even going to get it out? Because I'm still not expecting this character to die because she's a good person. We just killed somebody. They just did the fake out that like she almost got killed, but this guy got killed instead. Yeah. So like, it just in my head, it's not going to be here. And then the way she goes out, that's the other thing. They're such nice people, but like the way they die, it's just so fucked up.
Really? And they're the most like the way that everyone dies in this movie, every single person. Well, at least like the characters, not like at the end when it's just like this mass like smashing, but the way that every one of these like main characters dies, man, it is so hopeless because like she's in this phone booth and she thinks she's safe. No, the dude, the cook guy gets his face grabbed and he's probably thinking, let me pull out of this.
Yeah.
The jock, like he's thinking like this thing just dropped on me. And when she runs in and he's reaching for her, he's like, she's going to help me out of this. The homeless guy is like, he's like, oh, it's only on my hand. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, it's like they give you hope and then they take it right away. Every death, every single one. It's great.
It is great, man. And that's, but I don't know. I think I'm sure it's a dummy or however they did it, man. It's one of the best deaths in the movie. Just like, Jesus, man.
she like gets thrown around in there, like as it busts.
Like,
and the angle, like that's
like you see her neck break and like, it's just like, holy shit.
Chuck Russell. So like, again, like you got to give it to this dude. It's a shame that I don't know what his last thing was, but it's a shame.
I looked at it. It kind of went downhill. Yeah. I think he's doing a lot of TV now. I think that's probably why he was so good with The Mask. I think he I'll bet he like went to the effects guys and was like, hey, we got to kill this. We should have phone booth, whatever. How, what do you think? And like, they, like, cause The Mask, you kind of got to let Jim Carrey do his thing because he's the whole movie, And I'll bet he kind of takes the back seat when he has to like effects teams or special effects guys or whatever,
Right. But at the same time though, the thought to like, to position, to give us the angle that he did of above the phone booth, almost like looking down on it. That's him. That's all him.
Yeah. Now, because they would have had to come up with a special rig and build the phone booth special and all that.
So I'm surprised, like this dude, like did, like it's excellently directed. This movie is. There's a lot of like pullback shots and like shots that like pull back and around characters, to like give like a sense of like urgency. There's a scene later on where the camera like. Dylan and the girl are together and it like pulls back and around and the music that's playing, it's a really beautifully shot scene. I can't remember exactly words, but there's this guy isn't just like put up a camera, film next, put up a camera, film next. He's like thinking out how he wants to shoot this movie. And
it's shot like a real movie, especially seeing as many slashers as I had. Like you can appreciate that. Like it looked. If my wife walked in on me watching it and it wasn't one of the fucking like, like murder scenes. It looks like a regular movie. It looks like an episode of Twin Peaks, when shit's not weird in Twin Peaks, like it looks like a regular thing.
Yeah.
It's where are we at?
So this is where the preacher shows up.
There's another thing. But I wrote this in my notes. I had to point out again with the people are just fucking not, even though he's weird, there's something up with him. His whole thing, why he shows up in this scene is he sees the diner's all fucked up and like with broken windows. And he's like, he's like, hey, does anybody need any help? What's going on? Like, again, like the people are just nice, like it's a small town, but yeah, he goes in and I like that.
But right before he does that, goes in to check on people. There's a moment that I believe connects to the ending of this movie, where he sees the blob in the alley. And
oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And it's like there's this weird connection between the two. I know the blob doesn't have eyes, and like it's mostly like a instinctual creature, but there's a moment where the blob is just sitting there in the alley after he's killed the diner, and the preacher walks up and he pauses. And I feel like I feel like on the preacher's end, the preacher thinks he's looking at the devil. And on the blob's end, I almost felt like the blob is looking at a follower or a minion. There's like this weird
I can see
moment.
That. I mean, it is weird that he doesn't kill him. That
especially,
the blob.
Yeah, and especially, like at the end, the preacher is left as like the steward almost.
Yeah.
Of the next.
Well, that I have a whole sorts of thoughts about that ending. The next end of the world, like he's like the steward of, because he's got the blob. And I don't know, there's this moment there that they share. I don't know if it was intentional or what. And then the preacher goes in and kind of does what I view as him doing his job as a preacher, to check on the well-being of his flock, his people. And he shows that he cares. But I think what we see there in that moment is the true nature of the preacher, which is is what we see at the end of the movie. He's not a good dude. He's an evil dude. Right.
Maybe he's pushed to that point finally because of what happens, but I don't know. So the preacher goes in to check on everybody. Does he let them out of the freezer? No,
I don't know. Does he? I don't remember. I thought they just get out, but
they're already out because he finds the blob jewels.
Yeah, he finds it. He finds the little bit of blob and he puts them in a jar.
The little bit of blob. That's awesome. I want a little bit of blob. And so this is kind of where this is the third act. Everything starts to like just go ape shit, and we go into the movie theater.
The movie theater, man, it's awesome, man. Like, and I love they keep cutting to the movie. Well, at first they keep showing what the movie. That's a great thing where they don't, misdirect. They show the movie they're watching.
You're in the movie, like you're in the movie. You're watching the movie.
And it's the Jason parody.
Right.
Like, wait a minute, it's not hockey season or whatever he says.
Which is so meta, man. It's so smart for this, because at this point in 1988, that was
Jason's king right now.
Yeah, Jason's king. Jason's taken Manhattan in 1988. Yeah. And so like for them to be that aware of how the longevity of the slasher, idea and the slasher genre of horror or subgenre, like that's pretty awesome. This movie is just smart. That's Darabont again.
Yeah.
Or maybe maybe a little Chuck Russell too. Maybe Chuck Russell, Nightmare on Elm Street. So amazing. That's an amazing little thing. And then we pull out of that movie, and we're in the theater. And the blob he takes out the projectionist, then he takes out the usher.
I did write this down. We brought this up. It's just a tiny note. The projectionist, we talked about this last time. The vent, because he goes to check the vent.
Uh-huh.
The vent has little ties to it,
like
to show that it's not blowing.
Right.
And he goes and looks, and like he's like, "What the fuck? This thing's broken." Stick his head in.
Right.
It takes his head off. But I was like, "Fuck, man, they really do put that in movies." Just to
it's so
look, it's not working.
Like who? Yeah, I want to see the person that like goes around and ties danglies to like fans. I don't know.
Maybe people do it, but anyway, yeah, I thought that was funny. But
so
anyway,
it takes the projectionist, takes the usher.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the usher comes in and is like, "Yo, man, like the movie, what are you doing?" And he looks up on the ceiling, and that's this is where we're in full like John Carpenter, The Thing, like full on. The projectionist is like becoming part of the blob, but he's still alive, right?
Yeah,
because he's like moaning or something. Oh,
yeah, that one's rough. And it's a total bonus. Both the projectionist and this guy are just total bonus kills. Like they could have easily been cut from the movie.
Sure.
And because this is their whole thing. There's no establishing anything with these guys. This is the entirety of their appearance.
Right.
And they're both just awesome. Like
and it like reaches. This is where like it reaches down and like tangles up the usher and like pulls him up, and that's all we see of him. And then it like makes its way into the theater.
Oh, and then it takes out the loudmouth in the theater.
Oh, right. Pulls him up.
Yeah, the dickhead.
Right.
That's talking during the movie.
Right.
And then just starts taking everybody out. And while this is going on, we skipped the CDC. The CDC showed up.
Okay, that's when the science.
They're not the CDC, but that's how I have in my notes. Like they're some government organization.
No, these guys are like paramilitary, like science.
Yeah, this is going on while the movie theater. They're establishing like, hey, there's a dickhead in the movie theater,
right?
Like, and they keep cutting back.
And we cut, and we join up with the kids again now. And they're who are they with? It's just the two of them. Are they with the girl? It's just
the two of them.
No, the girl comes.
They're just
in later.
Two of them. The other kid's brother is there because he got him into the movie, but he works at the movie theater.
Right.
Okay. But so the other thing going on is, I'm just gonna call them the CDC. They're not, but they're a government organization. Comes in because Kevin Dillon and Meg go to look for the cops. Which at this, I mean, I guess that's what you do. I mean, that's what I like about this movie too, is like nothing. There's no, why the fuck would you do that? Like in so many movies, like why would you go in there? Like, why don't go upstairs? So there's everybody in here makes the decision you would probably make, Don't
they specifically go looking for RoboCop? Because somebody says like, oh, he was last seen out in the woods. So they go out to the woods, and it's like a ET moment when the science men show up. It's very similar to ET.
And it is such a curveball.
Like the lights and the helicopter, and you think it's like a UFO or whatever. And these guys just come out of the bushes with their science suits, and this is where we get introduced to the main guy, the black dude.
The black dude whose name I wrote it down is not the actor, but
the character. It's like
Dr. Meadows.
Dr. Meadows.
He seems very like the scene where he first meets him and say, hey, you guys gotta come with me. We're doing a quarantine. It's for your own good. We're just gonna lock this thing down and get it taken care of. Like, I trust him. I don't know if he's got a soothing voice. He's got a nice face. I don't know what it is. And like Kevin Dillon's like, fuck that. We're gonna go. And then it's no, you're not. They got the guns.
That's when he's like, my bike's over here, and then they come out with guns. He's like, hey, I'm down with a ride in a van, sure.
And so they basically kidnapped those two, and are they taking them? I don't know. I assume downtown.
Yeah, they've got like.
Oh, they are. They're taking them to the town hall with everybody. They're also collecting up the whole town.
Right.
At this time.
Right.
Except for the movie theater.
Right.
But anyway, this is another thing I love, man. They set shit up, man, so well. So they have the whole scene where Kevin Dillon's like, fuck this, let's get out of here. And she's like, dude, they're here to help us. Just chill out. Which is another like show don't tell. Like, he doesn't trust anybody. She has no reason to not trust anybody. You know what I mean? Because nobody's fucked her over, really.
Right.
And he's like, I'm leaving. And he breaks out, but like he uses so in the one of the first scenes in the movie, he goes and borrows a ratchet set from his boss to work on his motorcycle, and he uses it for the whole movie. Yep. Like he uses it to break out of the truck. He uses it to like fight a couple guys later. Like it's just nothing in this movie.
I didn't notice that. I didn't notice.
Oh, there's so much shit where it's like where you can't go like, well, wait, what? Well, there's one thing that takes me out of the movie every time. But and it's coming up. But like everything else is like, well, wait, with like, it's set up. Like even the zipper, like that.
Oh yeah, with the kid. Yeah.
Yeah, when they're running away. Yeah. The first time you see this kid, he's having problems with the zipper, and then the zipper fucks him or almost gets him killed.
Right.
You know, like everything.
So the movie theaters, they're doing the science thing, getting kidnapped. The movie theater is going bonkers, this is a great scene now in the 58 version. So in the 58 version, one thing that Svengoolie does is he points out things that they screwed up in movies. And in the 58 version, when everybody's running out of the theater, they show this one woman like 3 times over, and we're like running out of the theater like 3 times. And it's like, just like, but they show it from
it's like the same shot.
It's not though. They just
but it's the same.
It's like different angle. Yeah, different angles where they said like, all right, let's shoot it again, and this one extra gets in 3 times, and but this scene is very another one of the points between the two where it's very reminiscent of the original, and except like we see this was another death that like just stuck with me forever since I was a kid, where the
girl on the floor.
Yeah, the girl on the floor who's like she's kind of like moving a little bit, and the main chick like rolls her over, and she's just half melted off and stuck to the floor, which is, I wonder if that was intentional, because when you go to a movie theater, there's always some shit stuck to the floor, and like gum, you know, and you step in it. Yeah. You lift your shoe up, and that's kind of like what she was. Like the top half of her body was a shoe, and the other half was like the gum, and it was just like rolled her over, and it was just like, oh my God, and she's still alive, you know?
Yeah, it was just it's brutal. It's great. Oh, it's great. And just so so that's what the other thing that's going on. That's the other thing, man. This movie is, there's multiple things going on at different times, and it's so well cut. You know, like, and this is the next thing. So while that's happening, so that's the thing. They take her to the town hall with the rest of the town. She ditches that to go rescue her brother, and that's why she's at the movie theater. While that's happening, Kevin Dillon is like fucking off. He's getting his bike and he's like leaving, and he overhears the CDC talking about how like, oh, it's a, you know.
It's a man-made. It's a man-made.
Yeah,
virus.
Is it a man-made virus, or is it that their probe was man-made and they fucked it up? It's something. No, like they created the virus, right?
Yeah, he says like the first thing he says is talking about shooting bacteria up into space, and then the last thing he says, he literally says it's this is what happens when a man-made virus, something blah blah blah.
Yeah,
and so like, man, how messed up is that? Like, that's something that could happen. It's like they shoot some shit up into a satellite up in the space, and like gets weird and juiced up and falls back to Earth, and like, what? Because, you know, like, I don't know if you remember, maybe like it's a thing that exists in nature for a long time, but it became prominent maybe 10 years ago. There was like for some reason, these people, like in real life, they put a camera into this like sewer pipe, and and they came up on this blob that was like writhing and moving, and they were like, what the hell did we just find? And it turns out it's some kind of like conglomerate of wormy weirdness that exists in real life. Look it up. I don't know, people, if you're listening, look it up. Wormy weird. Google wormy weirdness in the sewer from 10 years ago. Google that, and you'll find it. And like, there's so many videos of whatever this thing is, and it's like an actual blob, except I guess it doesn't kill people. I mean,
Not yet,
I wouldn't want to get it on me or touch it or eat it or anything, but like I remember like that happening. Like, so, like there's I didn't know that was a thing when I was a kid watching this. And one of the things that's just stuck with me, body horror already, like there's some great body horror movies, but body horror is just so hard. This movie literally is a perfect example of the word chilling when referenced in horror movies, like, a chilling tale. Like this movie gives me the chills constantly with what it's doing to the people and the ideas that it's putting out, that it could be like a man-made, like real thing. It's like, I don't know.
Which is a great, because I never expected them to take it there either. Like, it's got the great setup, like so many other movies, like where like you have the it's not the establishing shot of this movie, but it's where, hey, it's a thing, it falls from space, it lands, here's the rest of the movie. We're not going to explain what it is, we're not going to explain, whatever. I think that's how it goes in The Thing and Predator, or like Spider-Man 3. Like there's, it just like Comet, that's it, and the fact that they explain what it is, I found really surprising.
It is surprising. And I wrote down, because like I love the idea that you don't need everything explained, right? But at the same time, I love an origin story. And right before the scene where we overhear the science men talking about it being man-made, I wrote down, I was thinking about, wow, here's the science team. I wonder what the origin is of this thing. And I wrote down, what if, on some other planet, there's these, because we see the preacher grab these, like the jewels, the blob jewels, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if
frozen?
They're frozen. Yeah. So what if the blob originated from like an ice planet, a cold planet, something,
right?
A planet with a really cold atmosphere, and in its natural state, it's just like a jewel, like a rock. But something happened on this, some explorer or some other thing, or maybe a comet or something hit, or a solar flare that like thawed it, and it like got somehow launched into space and floated to Earth, and heated up and became the blob. Like I could see something like that happening in some other science fiction movie or whatever. But we get the origin that it's man-made, but before that I was thinking, wow, where's this thing coming from? So I am glad that they gave us a little bit of origin on it. You didn't need it, which is a thing ironically in Walking Dead. We don't know where the virus came from, which is the case in most, zombie movies.
Most of the time it doesn't. I prefer not to know, because it doesn't. I mean, if you're going to explain it in your first movie. Don't do it in your second or third. Or do a prequel. But like I don't want to. If they weren't going to do it, I don't want a second movie where you explain that it's man-made.
Right. Yeah.
Like then I probably would have preferred. No, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Like we don't need I guess, we kind of got a Thing prequel, but like, there's no series, there's no,
over explanation.
Over explanation. It's like, hey, it's a fucking alien. It came from space. Like that's all you need.
Right. A couple like a line of dialogue. So speaking of sewer, this is where we escape the theater, and the kid gets stuck in the door and his zipper's stuck. He can't get out, and the blob is coming through the door, and they, the girl like gets the zipper off, and he gets out of his shirt or out of his hoodie, and they go into the sewer to try to escape, because anytime you need to escape, go in the sewer.
Go to the sewer. But like that, which by the way, that's the thing. I remember as a kid, I thought sewers were just, they were always open and easily accessible, because of like Ninja Turtles and movies like this, where it was just Ghostbusters, just go in the sewer. And I thought they all looked like, how they look, I thought they were all just going to be giant tunnels with just a little water in them,
Dude,
like.
Have you ever tried to get in the sewer? It's like one of the hardest things ever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had to work in not the actual sewer, but like underneath, like in the tunnels because I work for the transit company.
Oh.
And so I'm in those tunnels a lot, and there are tunnels like that are, but they're not, it's different. And yeah, the public sewers, I don't think are really, you can't walk through them like that. I mean, maybe you can, but maybe in New York, but anyway.
Have you ever seen any blobs when you've been down there? Have you ever seen anything weird like that?
No, a lot of gross stuff, but it's all human as far as I can tell.
Jesus Christ.
But that shot where right when she gets him out of the when his zipper's stuck, she gets him and the blob bursts the door. I think it's my favorite shot of the blob in the whole movie.
Comes like it's falling out.
It's like a plop, like a fucking, it's just raw. It's great. And just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And so then they jump in the sewer.
How do you think they filmed that? Like, what is that?
It's got to be not green screen. I mean, I think they probably shot.
It is green screen, and it's probably
they probably
a miniature of some kind.
The blob's got to be a miniature, but how do you do it? Do you make it a puppet? Do you? I don't know. I have no idea how they shot
it. It looks so like fluid and tangible, like,
and it's interacting with the environment that they were just in,
right?
So it reminds me a lot of Tremors. Tremors does this a lot, where there's like, shit where they probably, I don't know, maybe they built, that could be, I mean, they might have, no, there's no way, that's too deep. I was going to say maybe they built a miniature alley, like okay. They replicate, which is what they did with Tremors a lot, where they would build a smaller set of the big set, and then you have the puppet in the smaller set.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they did that. That's what I love about this movie. It's Jurassic Park like, in that like the effects are so good. Mostly there are a few janky shots, but like that you're never like, how do they do that? I mean, unless you're like thinking about it, like when you watch Jurassic Park, unless it's just, no, it's a fucking dinosaur, man.
Right.
That's
how this movie looked when I was watching it today.
Yeah.
Every time.
It's and it holds up.
That thing is really there. I don't know. It was crazy. So we're in the sewer and we're trying to escape this thing, and a lot goes on in the sewer. They're down there trying to get through and all this stuff. But the main set piece in this sewer scene is when they end up in like basically a mansion underground. I mean, it's this massive space.
Yeah.
And it's like filled with water.
They're being so the CDC guys are down there too, and I don't know if they're after the blob or if they're after the girl and the kids.
They're after the blob. There was like a team that was sent down there.
Okay.
To like take it out,
and
because they've got that rocket launcher.
Well, yeah, but they're okay. So that's that actually, because the whole thing, they go to shoot it, and one of the guys, one of the CDC guys says, "Don't shoot it." They said not to shoot it.
Yeah.
Like they're there. I don't think they're there to like I think they want to preserve the blob and study it. Like they don't. Sure. They definitely don't want to.
Science men always want to do that. They always want to study the shit. Paul Reiser, whatever. It's like, you do
have your ET guy in this too. That's like, that tells Meadows like, hey man, I don't like this. Like this isn't cool. These are people. You can't fucking wipe out a whole town. And
is that dude's name Peter Wolf? That actor in ET?
I think it is an ET.
Is that his name?
I think
he's a cool actor. He's a cool actor. Anyway, he's not in this movie.
That guy, yeah, that scene in ET. We can talk about that scene in ET. Anyway, the scene in the sewer is wild because it takes those guys out. Well, it's chasing. So this is where this movie. I mean, this movie's got balls, man.
Yeah,
like it kills an 8-year-old kid.
Yeah,
like
and it's in a
like
way
he was anybody else,
right? And it's terrifying because it's like it's almost more than as if he was anybody else, because you're putting this kid through this insane trauma. Like he's being chased. We get to the ladder. We think we're going to get away. And then it like grabs him and pulls him underwater in like a very violent, like alligator.
And again, you're given hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, they give you hope because she goes and chases him. And then
he pops out of the water and he's like already starting to melt and he's screaming and reaching. And it's like, this stuck with me as a kid, man. Almost messed me up. In fact, it did mess me up for a while. I remember having like wacky dreams and like being like, oh, I don't want to, like, Mom, I don't want to go in the sewer anymore. Like, you know, like she used to make me go in the sewer every once in a while. But like,
Yeah,
it was just, again, like that hopeless, like, oh, this guy's screwed. Like he got away for a second almost to like come up, even though it's like the Blob is presenting him in a way.
yeah. The
You
two
know?
movies that really stuck with me like that, like when they kill a kid, yeah, like it is like the Bob that he is like presenting him like, hey, fuck you.
Yeah. Like I'm gonna kill this kid. And like,
But his arms are out, like, help me.
Yeah.
Like it's so fucked. But like, I mean, Jaws obviously is a big one. Like they kill a kid.
Oh yeah, Jaws 2, right?
No, Jaws 1 kills Alex Kittner.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that kid gets fucked up, man.
Yeah.
And then you got and the other big one, the one that stuck me way more than Jaws was Demon Knight. That kid, Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, the kid in that movie.
Dude, great
because
movie.
that kid not only he gets possessed by a fucking demon and kills. Well, if we could talk about Demon Knight.
Did I tell you to watch that movie, or did you?
No, I saw. That's a
okay.
I hold that movie very close to my heart. I've seen that movie.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
Billy Zane's cool.
Oh, everything. William Sadler's cool.
William Sadler is awesome.
Oh, everybody in that movie. We know what our D movie's gonna be. We could definitely do Demon Knight.
We're not gonna do Dick Monsters from Outer Space. Damn it.
Is that a real movie?
No, I don't. Dick Monsters from the Deep.
This is the only genre where like it's not crazy.
It could be. If it is, then that's the one we have to do.
There's definitely probably a movie called Dick Monsters.
All right, so the kid's gone. The girl and the other kid get up the ladder. The other kid, does Dillon pull him out? Because I know he pulls the girl out.
No, so they go up into this. This movie is really smart about this. Is like trimming the fat when it needs to trim the fat. Like, okay, you got the two kids. The one kid is you have, the girl's brother, and then the brother's friend. We don't need two kids anymore. Fuck this kid. This kid's gone. And then it's like, okay, she saves her brother because she puts him in a little like cut. Like there's an area at the top of this ladder that he can fit through that she can't.
Right.
And then he's trying to get her through, and she's like, I'm not going to fit, man. And she's like, go, just get the fuck out of here. And then the CDC shows up and starts shooting at the Blob.
Right.
So the kid runs the town hall again, trims the fat. We don't need the kid anymore now. And Kevin Dillon happens to be in the sewers because he was running away from
riding his bike in the sewer.
Well, he was escaping the CDC. They found him. Right. They whatever. He ditched him.
Right.
Got to the sewers. And what I love about it is like, yeah, it's a super coincidence that he would go to the sewers to hide and she's in the sewers. But
at
like
this point,
the town's so small. Yeah.
At this point, who cares? Like they've been.
Yeah, I don't even. I didn't even think about like, oh, that's super coincidental. It's like this town's so small, and the forest is next to the reservoir. Yeah, that's where. Yeah, it's not crazy.
Sure.
Plus, he gets to all this badass shit on his motorcycle in the sewer pipes.
Right. And they run into more science men down there, and one of them has a grenade launcher. But they've all been jacked up. Like this is just the one science man is left.
Yeah, and he's all like, traumatized.
Right.
That's my one. That's my one thing where I'm like, because now every time I see this scene, I watch the bazooka on his back. He's got a fucking rocket launcher. I always thought it was a bazooka. It's a rocket launcher.
Right.
But like he's got it the whole time, and I'm like, he's freaking out. He's watching this thing eat people. And you got a rocket launcher, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're like pissing your pants to these teenagers, and you've got a rocket launcher.
Dude, this is where like I think about this. He's seen his crew. He's seen what the Blob can do. He's seen his crew taken out. He's seen that bullets and all this shit doesn't work on it. I'm gonna use the rocket launcher, and I'm gonna shoot the ceiling of the sewer so that it caves down and separates me from the Blob. That's what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but Dylan, I love this scene because, you know, dude gets taken out. They try to escape, and the CDs and the science men are like, you can't come up here. They shut him in the sewer and park a car over.
It's the scene that cements him as like,
yeah,
okay, he's doing it for science. All right, he's like every scene before this where he's like, you know, we got like where they're arguing with him about the town, and he's like, yeah, I'll sacrifice this town to save the rest of the world. Like, right. You can almost see his point, and maybe he's doing it for science, whatever. This scene's like, oh, fuck you, man. Yeah,
this dude,
like, they're like, hey, help us out of here, and he like covers the manhole and parks a truck on it.
Yeah.
Like, but what a piece of shit.
But it also like gives Dylan, in my mind, the most like, just like almost, well, just his hero moment. And I mean, he's been a hero this whole movie, but he takes the rocket launcher and just like, he's like, oh yeah, you're gonna park a truck on us, blam, and he just uses he just blows the manhole, the truck, everything. And then he comes, I love it, he comes out of the sewer, and it's like, it's this like fluid movement of like coming out of the sewer and grabbing the AK-47, and like the way that I mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, like he just bam, and he stands, he's got this stance, and he's got the gun pointed right at, you know, the science man. And that's when the science man like really like gets shitty, where he says he's trying, you know, everybody, it's a standoff. So you got
wait before we get to the Mexican standoff, hang on, I gotta talk about one thing before we get to the Mexican just popped my, you know what's fucking great about Dylan is he has his Han Solo moment where he comes back, like he's like, fuck this, I'm leaving. And I never thought about this, but like he went to the sewers after he heard like, hey, it's man-made, fuck these, when they're like, hey, we're gonna quarantine this town, fuck everybody. He has his like Han Solo moment, and that's why he went to the sewers, because the sewers lead to the center of town. He was going to tell the whole town. Right. Like, that's cool, you know, that he has that. Like, I'm sorry, now we can talk about the Mexican standoff, which is my second favorite part.
Yeah, and you got RoboCop standing there saying like, drop your guns. You got Dylan standing there saying like, this dude is trash, and then you got Science Man saying, this kid is infected and he's going to get all of you infected.
And he's going to kill. Yeah. He's going to get all you sick,
and you're all going to die. And it's like, you see the people backing off, and but Dylan like holds his stance the entire time.
Yep.
And then RoboCop puts his gun on Science Man. And
that's my favorite, because he doesn't like this kid. As soon as this kid comes up, he's got his gun on him. Like, hey, fucking, what are you doing, man? Like, this is a kid he doesn't like already. That they licked his face over in the movie and is holding an AK-47. If in a lesser movie, RoboCop would have been a piece of shit through and through the whole movie. He would have been like maybe racist, maybe have been like he wouldn't be. This is my favorite part of the whole movie, because he
gets redeemed.
Oh, totally. So they do the Mexican standoff, and he's got his gun at Dylan. Dylan's at the CDC, and the CDC's at Dylan. And they're all arguing about what, and Dylan's telling him like, hey man, this is bullshit. They did this. Why? And he's reasoning with him. He's like, why the fuck did they come here? How'd they get here so fast? They know about whatever. Yeah. And he's like, a RoboCop's like, I don't. That's some good points. And then they go to what's his name? Meadows tells the other guy to say, he just goes, just shoot him. And he puts his gun on the science guy. Like, whoa. This kid's my town. I know this kid. Fuck you. Right. Like, if anybody, it was great. It really was like a redeeming moment. Like, no. You're not going to shoot this kid. Right. Like, I don't even think he would have shot him. Right. And then again, he was like, I'll blow you away. Like, he says something like, just give me a reason to fucking kill you, dude.
And while they're like arguing, the blob arm comes out and goes. Science Man is actually, when you look at the scene, Science Man is the furthest away.
I was wondering about that.
I think this is another instance where we see the blob making a choice rather than just instinctual. He goes for the Science Man, because I feel like the Science Man is giving off the most like negative energy, the most heat in this thing. And the blob thrives off of heat. Blob squiggles around, he grabs Science Man, pulls him into the sewer, and the science man. This is another scene, where like I'll never forget it. He manages to wedge or hang on to it, use his rifle to hang on and not get sucked down, but it comes up through his suit and like fills his face mask, and then pulls him down, and the rifle like snaps in two, like he's holding onto it that hard. Man, it's
great.
It's painful,
and it's a perfect,
but it's so
like,
great. Yeah.
When you have dickhead characters like this, when you have like a Newman on Jurassic Park or whatever, like you want him to go out like this, totally. Fuck you.
Totally.
But then it's one of my favorite shots in the movie, just because I thought it was so funny, is like because then immediately after this, all of the other CDC guys are like, hey guys, fuck this, right? Like we're not like they all just start shooting their guns into the sewer. like this guy was the one thing that was telling them, hey, don't, like telling them not, like this guy was the boss, the dickhead boss none of them wanted to deal with.
Right.
But it was just like, he's my boss, what am I gonna do? I work here. And as soon as he's dead, they're like, hey, and they start shooting grenade launchers and shit. And they take that one big bomb and throw it into the sewer.
Right. He's like,
I love that scene of just them
big
shooting
big bomb, short fuse. Drop that in. And that's
like, hey, fuck this, right?
And that's like what sets off the Blob's like, fuck you guys. And he just comes bursting out of the street.
And this is when it gets awesome, man.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's okay. So this scene, the scene in American Werewolf in London at the end, where we see it from almost from the werewolf's perspective, as he's going down the street and his head's going back and forth and he's just like fucking shit up. The same thing, like the Blob is like going down the street, just like blam, blam, rolling over people, slapping,
just smashing people,
stuff. That the slap effect,
the
sound effect that they use.
You know what? One of the, again, like just trope killer, just like the shot where it's. I think this isn't the slap, but it gets taking the guy out like the slap, and he goes to pull his grenades, like moment, and then it does nothing. You see two little sparks of light under the Blob.
Yeah,
like it's just like, oh, that's so awesome.
But I love that they show they show the grenades going off underneath.
Yeah,
and
and they didn't do shit.
Right.
And this is where RoboCop shines too, man.
Yeah.
Because he's just, that's the thing, man. In a lesser movie, this guy would just be a piece of shit. He'd be, but he's saving people left and right, man. His whole thing is like, this is my town. I'm saving these people. Like this actor, besides RoboCop, he's a grade A piece of shit the entire movie.
Right.
But that's what he's supposed to be.
Right.
But like everything else I've seen this guy in, he's like an asshole that like has like a little bit of like a, oh no, he's not such a bad guy. He's not
human. He's human.
Yeah, he's human. I know guys like him.
He does have some humanity in him.
Yeah, like I know guys like this guy, that like this cop in the movie.
Right.
That are, they're not the worst guy, but like, do I want to hang out with him? No, but yeah, he's and he feels fleshed out because of that, because he's not a cartoon. And everybody's like that,
And he goes out doing his thing, and this is another death. It's like I say this with all these death scenes, but like, man, getting snapped in half the wrong way and being pulled through the bookcase,
and it's out of nowhere. It's literally right as I'm thinking, like, I think he might make it to the end. Like, I like this guy. They right when they get you to turn on him, being like, he's a good dude. I like this guy now. He's saving people. He saves the priest. The priest gets lit on fire. Yeah. And he's the one that saves him. He goes and gets him, puts them out, carries him out of there. Like, he's doing that. He's being a fucking hero cop. And then right when you're like, fucking A, RoboCop, he gets bent in half. It's just so brutal, man.
He's so great. That actor's so great at pulling off a death scene. Like his yell and like his as he's getting like pulled through, and then he finally just like his body just goes limp. So you just feel it. It's so painful. So everybody's gathered in the church or whatever, town hall, and Dillon goes for, I love, it's called, like, the name of the truck is the Snowmaker, like says it in big letters on the side, and they like
which they establish in the fucking beginning of the movie too,
right.
that I never picked up on when I was younger.
Right.
Like, but yeah, like they totally established that.
Right. And he busts that out, which is a great scene as he's like driving towards the blob, spraying it with like the snow, and then he like puts it into gear and like slams into it. And that's when like we get the maybe cinema's first machine gun chick, maybe not. And she
well, what I love is it seems like it's going to be the whole, I'm going to fucking crash into this and I'm the, you know, whatever. And then it just knocks him over. Like right. It's just a wah moment, you know.
There's two of those though, like back to back. There's that one, and then there's where she's standing on, she's got the machine gun and she's like, oh shit, this chick is badass. And then she falls over. Yeah. And you're like, you were so cool for a second. And then it was like, oh, Jesus. But hilarious. Yeah, you're just clumsy. Like, but again, I mean, I know we talked about earlier when she's grabbing that gun, man, and like, she doesn't know how to use it. That's a half second that I wish they would do in more movies. Like that she fires up. She holy shit. Yeah.
You know, but yeah. And then she's shooting off. And even when she's shooting it, you could tell she doesn't really know what she's doing. She's just firing it. She's trying to distract it.
Sure.
You know, but man, yeah. And then when they blow it up, it's and then he saves her again because she's dang. I wonder if that was like a note or if it was just like, I wonder, you know, because I could see someone being like, well, he's got to save her in the end or whatever. But, you know, I don't know.
I think it's pretty equal. I think like she does a lot of shit in this movie, man. And
yeah, she saves the kids,
especially at the end. Like he's stuck, he's screwed. And especially he's in the cab and it's like being crushed, you know, and it's the space that he's in, that Dillon's in, it keeps getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Until she does what she does. It's pretty awesome. But when they blow it up, I wrote down in my notes, fall, fail. And because it's like, it doesn't just blow up and create a cold, you know, snow or something. It totally changes the season in this town.
Yeah. The snow is like, it starts snowing.
Like it's what it is, but it's like, I'm like, what? Like
it would be like, yeah, it should be like the marshmallow scene in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it should just be a big pile of snow all over everybody.
Absolutely.
But it just starts snowing.
But so they blow up the blob. It turns into a bunch of frozen blob jewels. And Dillon's got I think this is the only one-liner in the movie as far as I can tell. He goes, he like stops for a second. He goes, "What a rush."
Does he? I didn't even just notice that.
Yeah, it's like a pause and like, hey, everybody listen, he's gonna say something. It's like, what a rush. I think it's the only one-liner in the movie.
Wow.
Which
he says something smart assy before he blows up the sewer.
Does he really?
Yeah, but I don't remember what it was. But it wasn't like quippy or clever.
This one's weird because it has no relevance to what just happened. Like it would have been, it works and it's a cool line, but I would have thought he would say something like, that was cool. Or like, like chill out.
What a rush. What was a rush? This whole thing running away from this blob.
I think that's what it was. It's like, dude, this day has been a fucking day.
Yeah. That's this whole movie takes place in like, not even one day.
It's like a night.
Yeah, it is one day. I was going to say it's all after the sun goes down, but I mean, it starts off with it's less than 24 hours, this whole movie.
It's probably like 12-hour movie. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So in the 58 one, we see them take the frozen blob to the Arctic and leave it with a helicopter. And then there's a question mark, which sets up Son of Blob, I believe it's called.
I've heard that there's Beware the Blob.
Is it Beware?
Which I've heard is terrible. I've never seen.
I think there's 3.
But I think there's a Son of Blob too.
So one of them, I meant to send it to you before we recorded, but one of them is on YouTube, one of the sequels from like, it looks like the 70s and it's like HD quality. And I kind of like flipped through it, scanned through it and saw some of the deaths and they were pretty good. The blob just looks like straight up jam being pressed through stuff. it has no character like this
well,
one
he
did.
was in the original. It literally was Strawberry Jam, wasn't it?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think so.
So anyway, if that's on YouTube if you want to watch it, but here there's a line where it's actually the ratchet guy says, "Hey, let's get this thing.
Yeah.
Let's get this thing to the ice house before sunrise." So they've got this killer blob frozen in some ice house somewhere, just sitting there, I guess.
Well, who do you even call? That's the other thing, man. Like, that's what's funny.
I don't
it's
know,
like,
man.
the government was already here and they tried to fucking kill everybody.
Yeah.
So, like, who do you even call? This is a MAGA town for sure.
Yeah.
They don't trust the government,
dude,
man.
You could set up. That's such good set. I mean, the movie ends with a great setup.
I go back and forth on this ending.
Really?
Yeah.
So it ends with after everything's saved and everything's fine. It's interesting because we don't get a recap on the main characters. We don't. No,
it's a Die Hard ending essentially.
Yeah, it just goes. Well, even with Die Hard though, they come out and they're like, they get in the limousine, everything's good. They get to punch, whatever his name is, and
you're right.
But here it's like the last time we see our characters is downtown, right when during the explosion.
Yeah,
and the last character we actually see is Ratchet Man. Saying like, let's get this thing to the cooler. And then flash forward what looks to be about, because the preacher's burns are healed and his hair is long. So I'm guessing probably a year, maybe two later.
It's been a while. The thing about this scene, I feel like if they did it now, it would be an after credit scene.
Right.
And when I was younger, I didn't even realize this was the same preacher because he looked so different and he just wasn't on my, I don't know what it was, but I didn't really, I realized it was this, I realized it this time, but when I did, I was like, oh, that's the guy from, okay. It's a weird ending. I don't know. It's fine, but it is just like okay.
It feels like
weird. He's creepy, but he is not like, I don't know. I go back and forth on this end.
This solidifies the creep factor in the preacher. And I think it has to do, again, I think there's this weird, I don't know if because Darabont has, in some of his writing, there's a very, I don't know if spiritual or supernatural undertones in a lot of the stuff that he writes. Green Mile, Shawshank, Walking Dead, like there's a supernatural factor. And I really believe, I'd love to interview him. And if I did, I'd ask him just about the scene in the alley when the preacher and the blob meet. And if there's an intentional connection between that, him not being killed during the melee, and being saved from the burns and all that.
Well,
and then ending up here at the end as the keeper of the blob. And
it's not even like
flock of people.
It's not even like that blob. Even like when he gets fucked up at the end of the movie, that's not the blob. That's because the guy's flamethrower blew up.
Right.
Like it's not the blob. Didn't even attempt. Blob wasn't trying to hurt him. That's what's kind of neat too.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he was spared by the devil or whatever. However he's looking at it.
Yeah.
So he wants to serve his master in a lot of ways. I think maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's how.
I wonder what the intention was. Like, was that sequel bait, or was it like just kind of like a throwback to like what was it like? Were they planning on like, hey, maybe we'll get to a second one, or like?
I think so. I think every movie does that. I think that this was more sequel bait than just a Dark Knight Rises ending where it's like, hey, think about however you want to think about it. Create.
This is definitely much more.
Create the next step in your mind. I think this was definitely set up, but it was also like, what would that movie be like? the preacher all of a sudden is like, yes, master, and like now is the time, and like sets the blob loose on the town, and maybe he is the first victim.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would do it. Is he's killed immediately,
like,
and I think you have a Werewolf in London kind of deal where it's like, or like Werewolf in Dubai. The only way to do it, if you were to do a sequel, do it in a brand new setting. Like,
sure.
it's not a small town, it's a city, or
Sure.
it's a, in this case, I guess it is another just small town in the middle of nowhere.
Well, he, like that establishing shot at the beginning. I think this is in the same place. I think that because we see that the town is surrounded by rural nothing, and when we see this at the end, his little church camp is set up in the middle of nowhere. I think this could be in the same place, but I think you're right. I think if I'm going to make a sequel to this movie, I'm going to make it the preacher takes the blob to the biggest metropolitan area.
Yeah, Vegas would be a good one.
And just sets it loose. I want to see the blob in New York, just like,
yeah,
just do it. Just go all out. But yeah, so that role, the last thing that I wrote down, two last things that I wrote down. One, the end credits text is like this hot pink. I love it. It's super 80s. And the song that's playing is called Brave New Love by the band Alien, who I had never heard of before outside of this movie, but they had a couple songs on the soundtrack, and that is a badass song. That's a
kick-ass song, and it's a badass like drop. Like
yeah,
the movie he looks at the blob in the jar, and it's one of those like you're like, hey, you just get your ass kicked by this movie, right. That's the vibe of that,
which
that song that plays.
In some ways, the song doesn't fit with the aesthetic of the movie, the small town feel, but at the same time, it does tie up this time, 1988, hair metal, because like, at the end of any other earlier 80s movie, you're going to get more new wave 80s music. In here we get this awesome like hair metal band. I'm gonna look up Alien and I'm gonna get some of their stuff.
I think I've heard of this band.
It's pretty awesome. And then the other thing I had was the Thing versus the Blob. Who wins?
Oh man.
Because on one hand,
the Blob.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Are we talking like at peak levels on both?
Both peak levels. Because
the Thing,
but equal. So like, yeah, the Blob can get as big as it can.
Right, but the Thing like needs like people. Like it has to.
So let's say
I don't understand how the Thing works, like, or even what it is. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what's the thing crazy about the Thing.
The Thing absorbs people and replicates whatever it absorbs, but it's its own thing. It's its own thing. So the Thing at the end of the Thing is about as big as it can probably get.
Right, but what does the natural state of the Thing look like? You know what I mean?
I think the natural state of the Thing is cells.
Okay.
But I'm saying, in my question, I'm saying the Thing at the end of the Thing and the Blob at an equal point of size. Because if the Blob
I would say the Blob only because the only thing that's what's cool about the Blob too is that like they throw fucking everything at it. Like honestly, if you dropped a nuke on the Blob, I'm not sure it would kill it because it nothing even puts a dent in it except when they freeze it. So unless the Thing can freeze it.
But here's the thing, no pun intended, but like, so at first I want to agree, the Blob would like take out the Thing by absorbing it and melting it, right? But then because of the nature of the Thing, at its most fundamental point is just cells that assimilate. Once the Blob dissolves and ingests the Thing, can the Thing then like assimilate, bring like absorb, like reabsorb, or like, or does it?
I don't know, because that's the thing. Like the Thing doesn't have to trick the Blob. You know what I mean? If in a straight fight, like the Blob, that's the thing. Like I mean, I guess the Blob has to sneak around in the beginning when he's little, and I guess the Thing does too. I don't know. They're very similar. I don't know.
Although I will say, the Thing is hurt by fire and heat.
Yeah,
it likes the cold preserves it, similar to the Blob, but the Blob is not affected by heat. So I think that the Blob would still win. I think the Blob would just melt it, done deal, destroy the cells.
Yeah, I think it would. Yeah, can't think of anything the Thing could do that it did that would be. Yeah. But man, one little fun thing I wrote down. This is so we totally skipped over this. This stunt in this movie where Kevin Dillon makes the jump that he fucked up in the beginning of the movie while he's being chased by a truck and I think something else. But there's a truck that crashes and I think there's a helicopter flying or something, and he makes this jump on this motorcycle.
Right. So
they really shot that. Like that's a real stunt. And they did all three of them at the same time. The stunt man, I know if I remember this right, he broke both of his feet on the landing.
Oh shit!
And but he kept it up. He kept the bike up because they had one shot. It was like, we're fucked. If you wipe out, like we got to crash these cars again. And like they probably wouldn't have done it again. I mean, I don't know what the budget was on this movie, but I'm sure it wasn't high.
I don't think so, because I don't know what the Blob was made out of. It changed color and texture and stuff like that, but at the same time remained consistent with its creature character. I think I read it cost like 19 million and like 10 million of it went to the effects. Yeah. Like almost the whole budget went to the effects. Sure.
It might not have been 19 million, but I know that like the majority of it went to the Blob.
Yeah.
But I mean, nobody was a name in this,
Right. But even still, it couldn't have been much to make those effects because of the way they did them, even though they looked so good. And it's crazy how they hold up. Yeah. And that's what's great about like when you do good effects, like, I mean, Little Shop of Horrors. I mean, something like that. It holds up because it's there. They're interacting with it, and it you know what I mean. When you do the work, I forget what it was. There's that phrase from I forget. Roger Rabbit that they asked the effects guy about. You ever hear that term, bumping the lamp? Like, okay, so there's a scene in Roger Rabbit. Like basically the way Roger Rabbit, all the light bound, they're like, we want real shadows. We want him like, if he's holding a phone, we want it to be a real phone, but we want him to be animated and this. And they went to all these different animation studios, and all these guys were like, yeah, you can't do it. You can't really do that. We got to have an animated phone. We have to do this. They went to this old school guy, and he was like, and the way he laid it out was this scene. This is where Bump the Lamp comes from. The scene where he's handcuffed to Eddie. He hits the lamp at the beginning of the scene. He's got this like hang down lamp, and the lamp is swinging for the whole scene. So the light is like constantly affecting them, and there's light bouncing off them. They're lit differently, and like when they explained that and had storyboard out, animators were like, "Yeah, you can't do it." And they went to this one old school guy. Like, no, you could do it. It's going to be like a shitload of work if you want it done right, but you can do it. It just takes time. Yeah. You just have to give us enough time. And Roger Rabbit is another one. Holds up, like looks perfect. And that's what these old school effects guys are like. Like if you're willing to do the work and put in the time, think about the Thing versus the Thing remake. Like the CGI looks like shit, and it's less than 10 years old. Right.
And you look at the original thing, and it looks awesome.
Right. That's also, and Roger Rabbit is included in this, because I think Roger Rabbit was 88 or 89, maybe 87. 80.
It is 89.
89. So that's just another testament.
It might be 88. You're right. Sorry, go ahead.
That's just another testament to the 80s, and the work ethic and the ingenuity and the imagination that went into effects back then. Now, sure, digital, there's some great stuff, but it's more times than not, in my experience and opinion, it's lazy.
Yeah,
and
it's because everything's easy.
That's why
not everything, but
it looks so much better.
Ahead.
It looks so much better when there's a realism to it. Look at like I love the Dark Crystal is a great movie from the 80s, but the Netflix show carried on that practical effects and mixed it with just enough CGI, similar to the new Star Wars movies. They're as practical as they can go, and then without CGI taking over. When you do that and you try to like make real with real, it pays off, it sticks, and it lasts. And I think that's what the 80s was all about. It was like because they didn't have a choice. There was no digital anything for the most part. So it was like, how do we make this work? And nobody wanted and people wanted to make good stuff. They didn't want to be laughed out of the theater. So that
and even when they're working, like the actors are actually like, they know what the director, everybody on set knows what this thing's going to look like when they're shooting it, rather than being like, yeah, man, we'll like, how many actors do you think? I mean, look at The Mist. The Mist is a great movie that they were probably, I'm sure I want to say the studio was like, hey, no, you got to do CGI because they don't look great. Like that's the big criticism of an almost perfect movie, is that they had like CGI creatures and they don't hold up. And they could have, because it's a Jaws type thing. You could have very easily done it there. Like, but they said, no, you got to do the CGI ones. And
fortunately with that movie, the movie as a whole works with itself and for itself. But yeah, I mean, it's every time I go back and watch this movie, I'm always just like so appreciative of what they accomplished, and that it still lasts. And I think a lot of that has to do with at least the ideas and what the end product was. Chuck Russell, man, because when you look at Nightmare on Elm Street 3, man, there's the Freddy worm. There's like,
again, with the creative death scenes.
Oh, dude.
Just so, like
the TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch. Like,
and setting shit up. He must love to, like, hey, we're gonna set something up in the beginning and then pay it off later. You know what I mean? Like, this chick's addicted to TV, so we're gonna. I mean, that's a pretty simple way to do it. But like, we're gonna kill her with a TV later or whatever.
The puppet.
Yeah. Oh God, this movie kicks
stop motion.
We can do Nightmare on Elm. That's gonna be tough when we get to
D.
end. That's my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street by far.
Yeah.
And 4 is my second. I like 4 too.
Yeah. All right, man. You got anything else? Any other behind the scenes? Any other tidbits?
No, that's it, man. That's really it.
What a great movie. And I'm glad that you watched the 58 version. I think we'll hit a point at some point we'll have a movie in here that does not have a counterpart, but I think it's cool that the first 2 movies we did had something to reference, that was not intentional. So
it wasn't. I was thinking about what to do for C.
One that popped in my head, and just we'll make our list and we'll pick from it. Cat's Eye.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, dude, it's like a little anthology movie. It's got Drew Barrymore as a kid. I know if you've seen clips and stuff, you'll be like, oh, that movie. I believe it's a Stephen King. I think it's a Stephen King story. But we'll talk about it later.
I'm open to it.
But yeah, there's that. What else is there? There's like cat people.
My first thought was, and again, I don't know why, it was just keeping with this thing of like, not Carrie, but Carrie 2, The Rage, which I saw in theaters.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
It was so bad. Yeah. And I haven't seen it since it was in theaters. And I'm not suggesting we do that.
All right.
But that would be that's not to Carrie 2, The Rage.
Well, we'll put our list together and check it out. Eventually, for everybody listening, we'll probably have some way for you all to interact with us and throw suggestions out of movies that you would like us to ruin for you. But in the meantime, I wanted to something we left out of the first episode. Kevin, where can they find you, and what are you up to? Briefly,
I'm on Instagram as the other Kevin Kroll. I don't post as much as I should, or I do, Yeah. But I am on there, and I am on, and that's it. I got a couple things I'm working on, but nothing that's fleshed out yet.
All right. Do you still have your book on Amazon?
Oh yeah, I have a graphic novel that you could purchase on Amazon. It's called Time Wise. It's about time travel.
Right on.
If you want to check it out.
So right now you're just trying to make sure that your offspring don't turn into serial killers, which is
right now I'm still I got an idea. I'm scratching away at them, getting there. I got two that I'm just kind of picking at, but they're getting there.
That's good. All right. Me, you can find, I got my Instagram. I got a few Instagrams, AC Toy Design. Mom gave them away. And then we have our Instagram, Death by Podcast. You can check that out, where we will be posting every time a new podcast hits. We'll be posting our updates there. So you can check that out. At the moment, did you not know about that?
No, I didn't. I'm gonna follow us now.
Follow it. So you can be updated on the show when a new show drops there for now. And we're just starting this thing, so it'll evolve as everything else does. But if you want to get in touch with us, check us out there. And I think that probably does it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in, listening with us. I think this one, we cut it about 9 minutes shorter than the previous one, but we're going to work on, you know what though, that's cool is that they could almost put this on as commentary with the movie because of the length of the podcast. So look at it like that. But we're gonna work on our time. But thank you for listening. This has been the podcast Death by Podcast, the podcast Death by Podcast. I am AC Adam Crone. That is Kevin Kroll, KK in the house, AC and KK. And thank you for listening. We will see you all in the future.